this machine, with no hyperbole, no exaggeration, it might be the most underrated piece of equipment for a home gym. And I know it looks goofy, I know it looks weird. Some of you probably know what it is, some of you have probably never heard of it, but the more I have thought about it over the years, and the more often I've seen them or used them, but more specifically since I've now had one, the more I'm starting to think like this is a piece of equipment that is completely unnecessary for a commercial gym. If you go to a commercial gym and it doesn't have this piece of equipment, that's fine, no big deal. Because commercial gyms have enough space, enough real estate, that they can have a dedicated machine for everything. But if you have a home gym where space is a premium, and one of the things that is like kind of a bummer for you is that you like these dedicated machines. You like very specific machines for very specific purposes, and you just simply don't have the budget, or more common, the space for these machines, then this is kind of a game changer. Now, this is a more modern piece of equipment. These have not been around forever. I've only started seeing these in the past 10 years or so. But most people call these a multi-angle hip machine. I don't know if there's another popular name. I've heard them called a few different things, but most commonly it's called a multi-angle hip machine. And it's a very, very basic design, actually. Every piece of equipment has a rotating point somewhere. Either there's a lever arm that rotates, like for example, if you're doing seated leg extensions, then the pad that goes against your shins, that's the lever arm, and it rotates at a point that's in line with your knee. So it swings to extend the knee outward. And it's the exact opposite for, let's say, a seated leg curl. You have the rotating point that's in line with your knee, and it swings in to work the hamstring. All machines typically have some point of rotation somewhere. So with this, the point of rotation is right here, right smack dab in the middle of the machine. But what's different is that it's not fixed. The point of rotation is, but where it rotates and how it's set up and what the exact ergonomics and the mechanics are, the actual ergonomics are different based on what you're trying to do. So this is the standard position, just straight vertical up and down. The pad is down here, but because it has dual pulleys and the cable goes right up in the middle, it'll have resistance in both directions. So even here from its standard position, you can push it to the left to lift the weight, or you can come around to the other side and you can push it to the right to lift the weight. It'll go in either direction, left or right. The next benefit is that you can actually pull this pin and select where the starting point is. So if you don't want it to be at the bottom and swing out and up to either direction, you could actually go maybe here and say, oh, I want to start there so I can pull down or push up from this starting point. Or up here, I can push down or pull up from this starting point, always in the same point of rotation. Then based on how tall you are or the limb length, whether you're trying to work your leg or your shoulder or something else, legs are longer than arms, upper portions longer than a lower portion. Depending on what your exact biomechanics are, you can then pull this pin right here, and it can be short, or you can extend it down to make that lever arm longer. And as simple as this seems, and it is very simple, it serves a very practical purpose that combines to a machine that's very unique and very, very usable. Now, I've wanted a machine like this. It kind of had this light bulb moment that this might be an accidental all-in-one solution to a gym full of machines. I've thought about this for about a year and a half, and I've been specifically looking for one and just couldn't really find one again. They're not super common machines, but this just so happened to be included in the lot of equipment that I got recently. I got 5 new machines. You might have seen the other video, but now that I've had it and I've got to put some of these ideas into practice, I'm coming to realize that not only do the ideas actually work out very, very well, but I've discovered brand new things I didn't even think about before. So with this machine the way it is, being a hip machine, a multi-angle hip machine, I've always wanted a dedicated a dedicated leg extension, leg curl machine. Now, I would love to have one machine that's for leg extensions and one machine that's for leg curls, but having a combo machine would save space. I've also wanted the hip adductor machine. the combo machine. I've also wanted a dedicated side lateral machine. I wanted all sorts of stuff, but again, not only would I have to buy all this equipment and move all this equipment, but I'd have to have a place to put all this stuff, and I simply just don't have the space. My home gym is already very, very crowded. But this kind of replaces all of those things, plus a whole lot more. So if I want to do hip abductors, which work this glute out here, then I could theoretically keep it right here, or if I wanted more of a stretch, I could actually start it in more and start from a further in position. And I can either stand right next to it and go straight out to the side to work that abductor muscle. Obviously, I can also change the angle of my torso. I can change which direction I'm facing. I can step around to the other side and do the other side. Or if I want to work the adductors, the inside crotch muscle, I could bring it up here and use this as my starting point. And now I'm able to work these adductor muscles by pulling in. Now right now it's bottoming out even though I could go higher. So I'm just gonna say, okay, this is gonna be my new starting point, so it stretches the muscle a whole lot more. Now, I have ended up using this machine for all sorts of stuff. I use it for my hip abduction, hip adduction. I use it for weighted leg lifts. So instead of hanging from pull-up bars and grabbing a dumbbell between my feet, instead what I'll do is I'll set it right here, and one side at a time I can lift the leg and work those lower abs like that. I will set it up for doing standing leg curls. I'll set it up for my side lateral raises. Side laterals feel just like the dedicated machine, except since you're only going one side at a time, you don't have the problem with most side lateral machines where one side can push a little harder and kind of carry the stack for both sides and you keep it in balance. This is isolateral, it's one side at a time. So if I got 12 reps with my right side, I know I've got to get 12 reps with the left side. And I've used it all sorts of stuff, side laterals, weighted leg lifts. I've used it for weighted crunches. I'll put it up higher, I'll crunch down. You could actually flip it around, for example, and you could, if you pull these handles come off, by the way, but if I did it right now, I'd bump my head, but you can pull these handles off, and then you can get underneath here and get this on your back, and now you're doing weighted good mornings or hyper extensions. You can do all sorts of stuff. If you were in a pinch, and if you were trying to make the most out of a home gym space and you thought, you know, I have my dumbbells or just a barbell for free weight stuff, but I want a machine so I can do some isolation work. I am hard pressed to think of any machine that does as much in a single machine as this does. I mean, again, I can do dedicated hip movements depending on whether I'm standing to the left or to the right, whether I start this low or I start it high, whether I'm facing in or facing to the left or the right, or I'm facing out, whether my leg is out in front of me or it's down to my side. I can basically work every angle of my hip. I can work my hip flexors. I can work my glutes by doing a weighted glute kickbacks with a pad behind my leg. I could do hip abductors, hip adductors, basically every angle for the hip and leg combo. And I can do most of the stuff for the shoulders as well. When I drop down to one knee, I can do my weighted side laterals. I can also turn and suddenly I'm doing weighted front raises, or I can turn again and I can do almost like rear delt kickbacks. I can also bring this up higher and get it at an angle. And if you like those old Nautilus pullover machines for the lats and really get that tight pull in with the elbows, I could set this up and do the same thing. I bring this pad up, I get one elbow up on it, and I'm suddenly doing a pullover with a heavy resistance all the way in as far as I want to go. So you can start to really, really get creative with whether you're working your upper body or your lower body, whether you're working a pushing muscle or a pulling muscle, whether it's a big or small muscle group, whether it's the legs or the arms or the shoulders or the hips or whatever. I mean, this thing really carries its weight well. And now this one is a very basic model. It's older, it's not in great shape. I've been cleaning it up and making it get back to a really good functional machine, but Some of these that you find are very, very nice. They have much heavier weight stacks. They have even more adjustability in how you can set up the angles or raise or lower the foot pads, what you can do with these handles right here. I mean, if you were to bring a box like from the gym, bring a box over here or a bench or something, you could set it up so that you could have a bench sitting right next to it at an upper angle, and you could use this for lying leg curls or seated leg curls or lying leg extensions or seated leg extensions while your body's being supported by the bench. I mean, the possibilities are almost endless, especially if you then start attaching different attachments. This has got a little threaded hole at the end so you can screw handle attachments into there, and from screwing attachments or accessories, or I could take a rope and hook it onto here, you could really start to get creative with all the stuff you could do. So this video is not super complex, it's not super in-depth, it's more kind of putting an idea in your mind. I don't know if you've ever seen these at the gym or not, but this is typically called a multi-angle hip machine, and in a commercial gym environment, it's actually not super necessary. Commercial gyms are already gonna have all the dedicated equipment that this kind of replaces. But if you're in a home gym, then I guarantee nobody has ever marketed one of these to you. I might be one of only a handful of people on the planet that has one of these in a home gym, but I am learning very quickly, especially the more I use it, that with a very small amount of floor space it takes up, I mean, this is probably 3.5 feet width, less than 4 feet in width. It's actually narrower than a squat rack, and its depth is about the same. So let's play it safe and say it's 4 feet by 4 feet, but I promise it's not even that big. Even height wise, it's not very tall. It's maybe a little over 5 feet tall. This replaces so many things, and it does it really, really well. Now, just as one example, as a little bonus to tell you why would you want to do side laterals on this machine when there's other options, and I'll tell you exactly why. So when I have dumbbells in my hands and I'm doing side laterals, traditional dumbbell side lateral, there's nothing wrong with it, but the resistance curve is very specific. So down here at the bottom, there's not much resistance at all. You can kind of swing these back and forth and it doesn't take much. The higher you go, the more to your sides you get, to the point where you're to the very top, this is where the resistance is the highest because you've created the longest moment arm working against your shoulder. The dumbbell's all the way out here, but the shoulder that's lifting the dumbbell is right here. So it's a very long lever arm. The lower you go, the closer in line it gets with that lever arm or that moment arm, the closer it gets with this rotating point, this point of rotation. So the less resistance there is, to the point where just holding it here, it doesn't tax your shoulders at all, you're just holding it. So a little bit hard, gets harder, 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 to the point where at the top you're at the hardest. So with these, the resistance curve makes it so that it's very easy at the bottom, but it's the hardest at the top. That's why with traditional dumbbell side laterals, people start failing at the top first. They'll get to the point where they can't quite go all the way up. Then the next rep, oh, it's a little shorter. The next rep, a little shorter, until they can't really do much of anything. But then down here, they can flutter their arms almost all day long, even when they're tired. So dumbbell or free weight side laterals have a strength curve that's biased, the most resistance being in the contracted position. On the other hand, cable side laterals, like using a cable crossover machine like I have here, these are the opposite end of the spectrum. A cable side lateral means that because the cable is over here to one side and the cable is going at an angle, the resistance is coming from an angle, it's actually really hard at the bottom. It's pulling directly against that resistance. But when I'm all the way at the top, the cable, my arm, is actually in line with the resistance curve. So there's still resistance, but it's not nearly as much. The higher I go, to the point where it's this, it's just kind of holding it overhead at lockout. This doesn't take much muscle at all. So the resistance curve is biased to the most effort down here, where again, there's the longest moment arm working against that resistance over here. And it's the lightest up here when it's more in line, kind of a lockout position. So with traditional cable machine, the resistance curve is biased to the bottom. It's most difficult in the stretch position, which in many cases is good, but it's different from the dumbbells. That's why dumbbell side laterals and cable side laterals, though they are comparable, they're not exactly the same. You're not going to get the exact same effect from them. The step past that is machine side laterals. Now I'm going to use my hip machine, for the side laterals because it's going to work it the same way. But with a traditional side lateral machine, or in this case my hip machine, the benefit is that you have the exact same resistance through the entire range of motion. So because of the way the machine works, in order to move it a little bit, there's already resistance. So right here in the bottom position, I have to push to the left. There's the full weight of the weight stack right here. And because it's swinging around on a cable-driven pendulum, it maintains that resistance all the way to the top, to where here it's rotated around and the exact same weight is pushing down on my arm with the exact same lever arm. So the amount of resistance I feel here at the very top, no matter how high I go, is the exact same resistance I feel down here in the bottom from the starting point. So it's a very consistent resistance throughout the entire range of motion, which is unique to a machine side lateral. And it's that type of thing. It's because different equipment typically yields a different type of stress, a different type of resistance curve, and then typically a different strength curve, like what's having to be exerted against that force, which can also change the results. It can change the effective range of motion, all sorts of things. That's why there is no piece of equipment, single piece of equipment, that is good versus bad. It's all just different. It has different purposes. And depending on what your goals are or what you like or what you connect with more, you might like one or the other. For me, I have access to dumbbells and barbells and cables, but it doesn't change the fact that I still want the option of having that consistent 100% range of motion of a, let's say, a dedicated machine side lateral, because it's different than using dumbbells. It's different than using cables. And now, rather than having to go out and buy a dedicated machine side lateral, I can use my multi-angle hip machine. It does literally the exact same thing. Just like the machine side lateral, it has a pad that goes against my elbow. Just like the machine side lateral, I can change where the pad goes so it's higher up or it's lower down. I can even drop it down way low and straighten my arm out so that the pad's on my wrist. Just like the machine side lateral, it's driven by a cable with a rotating arm on a rotation point that's lined up with my shoulder, so that it's consistent throughout the range of motion. Everything's the same, except this one is isolateral, it's one side at a time, whereas the machine is two sides at once. And I actually think this is more beneficial because, again, it guarantees that my right side can't push a little harder and compensate for a weaker left side. So it's that type of thing that makes this so beneficial when I'm doing my hip adductors, my glute kickbacks, my knee raises, my pullovers, my side laterals, anything. This is an unbelievably useful and underrated machine, especially if you have a home gym. So anyway, that's all I've got for today. I just wanted to show you that. This is one of those that it's a total sleeper. Nobody talks about it. It's not glorified. You never see it in YouTube videos. And when you do see it in a gym or a YouTube video, someone's doing one single movement and not doing it very well, and it makes it seem like kind of a gimmick. But in reality, it's an awesome machine, and I highly recommend it. So anyway, until next time, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye.